The curtains were blue. Your teacher thinks this is because the curtains represent immense depression and the lack of will to carry on. But what the author really meant is that the curtains were blue. This meme has been around a long time. I mean, I remember seeing it as a teenager many moons ago and laughing along with it, like, ha, teachers do be overanalyzing. I mean, not everything in a story has a purpose, right? And then I tried writing a story myself. I wrote many stories, actually, and the more I wrote, the more art I created, the more I came to realize that this meme is dumb as hell. And I mean, yeah, it's meant to be a joke, you know, just a little chuckler for the boys. Perhaps I shouldn't take it too seriously. Except, it seems like a lot of people already have taken this seriously. Anytime the topic of media literacy gets brought up, someone will post this image or say something about blue curtains and get a whole bunch of likes for it. This may be a silly meme, but the message behind the meme has resonated with a whole lot of people. And as a result, there's a sizable chunk of the populace who believes that most artistic details don't have any purpose or meaning. And to show you exactly why that isn't true, we're gonna do a little creative writing exercise. We're gonna be artists. We'll write a short little story ourselves so you can see the writing process in action. In this case, let's write about a young man who's just lost his job and is understandably a bit sad about that. I think most people can understand that simple situation. I mean, we've all either lost our job before, or at least worried about how awful it would be to lose our job, so yeah, I think that's pretty universal. So the question is, how do we start? Well, to keep things simple and snappy, let's begin with our main character coming home from work just after being fired. How does this sound for a first draft? Joseph, who was 23 years old and 6 feet tall, opened the oak door to his 2-story brick house and shuffled onto the white shag carpeting that covered his living room floor. He had just been fired. The off-white walls that greeted him were broken up by 2 rectangular windows, adorned with silk curtains. The curtains were green and thick, blocking out much of the 2 p.m. sunlight. He walked at a slow pace, roughly 1.6 kilometers per hour towards his teal memory foam couch. He lay upon it, horizontally while facing northwest, as he stared with brown eyes towards the roughly textured ceiling which stood above him. Now, I wouldn't exactly call that writing bad, necessarily. Like, it makes sense. The grammar is fine, and it has a ton of factual details. We know how tall Joseph is, what time he's arriving home, and even his approximate land speed while walking over shag carpeting. We also know exactly how many windows his living room has and what color the curtains are. This paragraph describes everything we could possibly want to know about this scene, which is exactly the problem. There's too much information here, and as a result, it doesn't flow very well. Not only is it tedious to read, but all those details make it easy to lose sight of what the story is actually about. We put so much effort into describing the physical aspects of our character and his house that you probably forgot that he was just fired, which, you know, is the whole point of the story. And that's why books generally don't tell you the age, height, and speed of every character in every scene. You usually don't get a detailed breakdown of the carpet and curtains for every room that gets entered, because if a writer did do that, then even really simple books would be thousands of pages long. Writing a story is a very deliberate act. You have to choose each and every word that you want to include, and more importantly, what you don't want to include. In this case, if we want to tell the story about a man losing his job, then we probably don't need to mention his height or the direction his couch faces. Those facts aren't relevant here. So let's give this a second attempt. I'll write this scene again, but this time, I'll strip away all the pointless information and make this as simple as possible. Joseph returned home from work. He had just been fired. He laid down on the couch and felt depressed. Now, in addition to not wasting your time, this version manages to convey all the important information while using far fewer words. It may be simple, it may contain significantly less detail than our first attempt, but it manages to strike at the heart of the story we're trying to tell, and it conveys it well enough that you might actually feel a little something, which, is the key strength of storytelling, of art in general. By playing on the audience's emotions, art can deliver a message much more effectively than simple, straightforward language could alone. Like, I could tell you it sucks to lose your job, but that statement doesn't have much impact on its own. You can understand the words, but I don't think you understand what it feels like to be suddenly laid off, or how badly it can really affect a person. And while I could sit here and explain it to you in detail with factual examples, that would probably take well over an hour, which means it wouldn't be very interesting. Even if you managed to sit through my entire speech, most of you still probably wouldn't get what I was trying to tell you, simply because I wouldn't be telling it in a very compelling way. Artistry solves that problem. A well-told story can make you feel like you've shared someone else's life experiences. It can make you understand what it's like to lose your job much more effectively than any mere conversation could. And it can do so while being entertaining in the process, or at the very least engaging. And that's the problem with our second draft here. It's not engaging. It lacks anything to hook the audience. We've stripped away so much detail from it that it's really only one step away from saying losing your job sucks. If we want our story to have some weight behind it, if we want it to be a work of art that impacts the reader and delivers our message, then we need to make it more dramatic. We need to spice things up a bit, add in some characterization, some poetry to reinforce our ideals and make the audience truly feel something. So let's give this one more try, one more draft, and see if we can do a little better. Joseph returned to his empty husk of a home and made his way over to the couch. He had just been fired, and he walked numbly. The only light came from a window covered by curtains of thick velvet. The curtains were blue, casting the entire room in a dim cerulean hue that made it feel as though we were drifting across the ocean floor like so much discarded garbage. He sat down, unsure of what to do, and then after a while, simply lay down, staring blankly at the ceiling as he let the blue afternoon wash over him. Now don't get me wrong, that's still kind of tacky. I am no professional writerman after all, but I'd like to think that version is at least a bit more effective than the first two. It says everything that needs to be said. He's home from work and he's sad, but it does so in a way that might actually stick with you. I mean, it's one thing to be told that a man is unhappy. It's another to envision him lying there, feeling like garbage, in a room where the only light is filtered through fabric that is dark blue, a color most people associate with sadness. I didn't have to mention the curtains. I chose to include them, because I thought that detail would reinforce the depressing mood that the character was in. And the curtains didn't have to be blue either. They were green in the first draft, but because they don't actually exist, I can make them whatever color I need to fit the scene. And I chose to make them blue. Because again, writing is deliberate, unlike real life. In real life, a person's curtains might be blue for any number of reasons. Maybe the curtains came with the house. Maybe they were on sale when the owner bought them, or maybe that person just likes the color blue. Reality is often a chaotic, messy, and downright random thing. People are just trying to get by however they can, and not everything has a logical purpose. People mess up, they make mistakes, they stumble over their words from time to time. But when it comes to fiction, everything happens for a reason. The entire world is manufactured from the ground up to serve the purpose of the artist. They decide whether or not the curtains exist. So if they choose to mention them, and they go through the trouble of making them a specific color, then it's probably for a reason. Perhaps because they represent depression and the lack of will to carry on. Now, of course, all of this comes with one big caveat, which is that it assumes that the author knows what they're doing. If the writer is a complete amateur, or someone desperately trying to reach a word count so they can collect a paycheck, or an AI, then they might choose to describe parts of the character's house that have no relevance to anything. They might tell you about the curtains for no reason, or choose a color at random. Now, that being said, if you're reading a book in school, like the meme implies, you're talking about your teacher, then none of those situations are likely. I mean, it's been a while since I attended school, but I don't think that they teach fan fiction there, or mass-produced ebooks. English literature classes tend to focus on novels and plays that have stood the test of time, stories which have something to tell you about the past, or stories that can help you understand different perspectives that you wouldn't get to experience otherwise. If you're reading a book in school, and the curtains are blue, there's probably a really good reason behind it. Which is why this chart is dumb as hell, and I hate it. And hopefully now you do too. Anyway, thanks for listening to this little rant. I hope you have a good one, and until next time, stay safe out there.